everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. Bee's right under my feet. I guess I dropped some beef jerky earlier that I didn't share with her. Is there anything down there? All right. So I'm here in Clinton, Iowa. I'm wearing my Iowa Hawkeye t-shirt today to celebrate the fact that the Hawkeyes got shut out in Happy Valley last night. Now you say, Terry, you're a Hawkeye fan. Why are you happy they got shut out? Because, and this is doing things the hard way, but the offensive coordinator at University of Iowa football is, he's offensive to only to football fans of Iowa because his offense sucked it's been sucking for several years. But Iowa has historically had, and I say historically, over the past several years, had killer defenses and great special teams. And so this year, like, even though he's the offensive coordinator, his name is Brian Ferentz, and yeah, he is related to the head coach. It's his son. So Ferentz, the offensive coordinator at Iowa, is a Nepo baby, okay? And legit, if he was at any other college, right? Well, actually, if he was at any college, including Iowa, if his dad was not the head coach, he would have already lost his job. But before Gary Barta, who was a piece of crap AD that was at Iowa, left, they signed Junior Ferentz to a 1-year contract instead of this rolling 2-year contract that he normally has. And by the way, he makes almost $1 million a year, or he was. So he took a pay cut, and then all he had to do was take this Big Ten team who's going to have a bunch of easy games against some soft teams in the Big Ten West, like, Illinois and Northwestern and stuff, and some teams like, who'd they play last week? Western Michigan, that powerhouse. And then I think they did play the Cyclones, and that was a good game, and they won. But then who'd they play? First game of the year, they play, I don't know, Little Sisters of the Poor or some other convent team, and beat them up, right? You know how it goes at the beginning of the college football season. But here's the deal. Junior Ferentz, the team, and this is so easy, right? But the team has to average 25 points a game. Now, it doesn't matter if the defense gets 3 pick sixes and then someone kicks a field goal, right? That would count as 24 points, so the offense would only, and then if they got a safety, there you go, 26 points, even with the offense, laying a goose egg, he'd still get, he just has to average 25 points. But now they did 41 last week against, Western Michigan Prep Academy. And so getting blanked by Penn State means that it really hurt their average. The other thing is, and I will say this, Penn State looked to be the toughest game on the schedule this whole year. So they very well could be in the Big Ten championship game and yet not have scored enough points for the offensive coordinator to keep his job. And the other thing is they're supposed to win 8 games. So if they win 8 games and average 25 points or more per game, then he keeps his job. I'm betting that unless the defense and special teams rip off a bunch of points in several different games, he's not going to keep his job. They had 79 yards of total offense. Like, they didn't even have an entire drive's worth of total offense yesterday in 4 quarters of football. He's way over his head. And no matter what happens, I hope Kirk Ferentz just leaves too. Because these last few years show that he doesn't have the leadership ability. You know, he's lost it. He's always been a very average coach. He's an average coach. I don't care what anybody tells you, right? He plays in a weak division in the Big Ten. He plays in the weak division. Okay, he's a very average coach if you look at his career numbers. So anyway, thank you, Penn State. Actually, you know, the Nittany Lions shouldn't take a lot of credit. I mean, honestly, the offense, they could have just stayed in Iowa City and saved on airfare. They have their own jet. Speaking of could have saved on airfare, I think what happened is that the the Commanders took the Iowa offense today and got a field goal out of them against the Bills. But anyway, sorry for all that brain damage. Coach Prime got, you know, Colorado got beat. But you know what I like about Prime? You compare Coach Prime's press conference to Kirk Ferentz's press conference, right? Coach Prime went out there and said, yeah, man, we got our butts kicked, right? Like he knows a good old-fashioned Texas ass whooping when he sees one, right? Kirk Ferentz is like, well, we're sticking with the program. I don't believe in making wholesale changes. It's like, yeah, I know you don't, right? That's why we're here, right? That's why your son's on probation. So anyway, enough about that. Okay, so I was watching my friend Lyle. He's back on the road. He did a video. He started talking about winter's coming. I got some news for you, my friend. Winter is here. Let me say this. Today's Sunday, Friday night, coming across Wyoming, 36 degrees and snow flurries, baby, right in the Arlington area between Rawlins and Laramie. Yeah, and pretty stiff winds, although the winds were going to increase. I got across there, I got parked, I got over, I split my clock in Green River, took a shower, took a nap. I actually wanted less trucks on the road, even though I've had a friend describe driving across Wyoming at night as like being in a tunnel. I like less trucks on the road because you never know when some chucklehead that got a CDL yesterday and doesn't know that there's this thing called a Jake brake on a truck runs into the back of you. Speaking of which, and I don't want to sound like a grandpa, but I really do think, now don't get me wrong, right? Sometimes you just get overcome by events. Sometimes, like I was in a snow squall that was like a snow, like somebody had this enormous box of snow and just dumped it like right in this 3-mile area, radius 3-mile area in Connecticut one time when I was at night. I was on I-84 and all of a sudden it was just like whiteout conditions, like little bit of snow and it slowly increased. No, it was like bam. And that was kind of crazy. And I was just like, I hope no one hits me. I don't hit anybody. And I actually stayed in the left lane because I'm like, all these people were panicking, throwing their flashers on and just slowing down to nothing in the right lane. I'm like, if I just keep going like maybe 35 miles an hour, maybe no one will run into me and I won't run into anybody. But, so that happens. I admit that happens, and it can happen to any of us, even if you're really paying attention to the weather. But here's the thing, and I saw this twice on Thursday, because I had to deliver Thursday evening in Corrine, Utah. So I was coming up, I had stayed overnight in Cedar City, Utah, down southern Utah. So I'm coming up 15, headed towards Corrine, Utah. I had a live unload at Walmart. And bright sunshine, right? Perfect weather. And what happens, I'm coming down this mountain and there's about 3 or 4 like really steep, and then, you know, steep passes you kind of go over on heading north from, say, southern Utah to Salt Lake City. And I think it was the third one. It's not the Dog Valley one, which I think is the last, is the most northern. It was like the one before that. And you come over and you go down this hill, but there's a curve to the right. And so I was coming down, you know, I'm kind of, you know, I'm zipping along, right, because I'm going down a mountain. But, you know, I wasn't going crazy. And I was like, man, those trucks are keeping their brakes on a long time. And they were already towards the bottom, you know. So then I was like, oh, man, I got to stop. I got to slow down. So I really got on the brakes. And I think my Jake brake maybe was already in 3. But I really started slowing down because I realized they were slowing down a lot for some reason. And we get down there, and there's an RV still attached to its tow vehicle, but it's like it had gone, it had started to crash on the right side of the road and skidded across into the median. It was actually facing the opposite direction. It was facing uphill, even though it had been going downhill. But what I think happened, because there was a truck stop there and it was an Amazon trailer, I think that the Amazon guy, from what I could see from the damage and everything, the Amazon guy couldn't control it in the turn and bumped into the dude with the, you know, the travel trailer and the pickup truck. And once he hit him, that dude went like out of control. The truck went by, but then this guy had gone off on the right shoulder, and then of course overcorrected like you always do, and then wham, in the median. The truck had stopped. But I'm very confident when I say this, that accident was caused by excessive speed. Okay? And then fast forward a few hours later, I'm headed through Salt Lake, but now there's a storm front passing through. It's pouring down rain, right? And I'm almost up to Kareen. I'm north of Ogden, and there's a curve on 8415, and, you know, everybody was flying by me like it was just bright and sunny, but it was raining hard. And, you know, I'm just putting along 55 miles an hour in the right lane, taking my time because I wasn't in a hurry. And in fact, I was going to go up to the truck stop in Brigham City, the Love's up there, and split my clock because I was ahead of schedule. But one of these double trailer dump truck thingamajigs, you know, I think this was one that had the opening on the bed on the bottom of the truck, not a side dumper, but, you know, 2 trailers. You know, a bunch of those guys had gone flying by me, so we come up there, and this curve there's an overpass right on this curve, and it's 3 lanes through there, and I see emergency vehicles like crossing the bridge. Well, then we get up there and we get around the curve, so it's like you can see the on-ramp now. This dude had, I think, overshot the curve, right, in the rain with his 2 trailers, and then went off the right side of the road because there was mud and shit everywhere. And then he was on his side in the little Y where the on-ramp comes on. Again, excessive speed, guaranteed, right? There were no other vehicles there. And here's the thing, right? Like, even I say guaranteed. I mean, it could have been like he blew like 6 tires at the same time, but I doubt it. Here's where I'm going with this, right? It's already been snowing in places out west, right? And Lyle said, get off the road. That's the best strategy. And it is, right? Get off the road. I apologize, I keep saying right. It's the mental pause. Get off the road if the conditions are bad. I saw an advertisement on, I just happened to be looking at Craigslist job postings because I do stuff like that. And I noticed a thing that said, yeah, we'll pay you for throwing chains. And I was like, I don't want pay for throwing chains. I want you, if you're my dispatcher, my trucking company, I want you to say, hey, it's okay if you pull over. Throwing chains, and by the way, I know how to put chains on a truck. I was at night and they taught us that stuff. I mean, it was just part of the deal. And I have chains on my truck, so I'm compliant with the laws in states out west that I drive to. And, you know, I don't necessarily shy away from bad weather, let me rephrase that. I don't shy away from going places where there could be bad weather. If you look, I did a video last winter where the snow on Donner Pass was probably 12 feet high at the rest area up on Donner Pass. I go over Donner Pass in the wintertime. I don't go over it when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. I don't try to go up there when they say you need chains, because chains, by the way, for those of you who don't know how this works, here's the hierarchy of winter disaster. First is dry roads. Then it goes to wet roads. Then it goes to roads that start to get slushy and have snow building up on them. Then, shortly after that, if it doesn't quit snowing, they're gonna go to chains. And after chains, and here's the thing, trucks get bogged down on mountains even with chains. Chains is not a guarantee you're getting over that frickin' summit and down the other side safely. Don't let anybody fool you. Chains are not like the get out of jail free card. They don't just get you through the storm, because it can get bad enough, or if even one little thing goes wrong, your lane will come to a stop on one of these mountain passes and you might not be able to get going again, even with chains. Okay, so chains is like that fourth level. And then the next level after that is where something happens. Either the snow is coming so hard that they can't keep up, which happened last winter, or somebody has not even a wreck, but like a stall out. Somebody gets a flat tire, somebody just loses traction. A lot of times the trucks, hey, I'm talking here. The trucks that you lose traction are these guys that are LTL, because especially if they only have one axle, they got no weight, and their trailers oftentimes are very lightly loaded, and they don't have enough weight over the wheels they do have chains on, and they're toast. They're done. Okay, so that's just a little bit of winter driving, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, make sure you bring your mittens and your earmuffs. I was conflating those two words. And your snow boots, and make sure you bring warm socks. Forget about it, right? You know how to dress in the wintertime. What I'm trying to tell you is, and by the way, there are websites for all these states. WYO Roads, WYO Roads.gov is a great site. Wyoming has the best road condition site there is, because you can break it down by road and then by segment of the road. So California has a good website for their passes. You want to know before you commit to that mountain or that mountain range whether the chain laws are in effect. Check the weather. Find out, like I use Rawlins, Wyoming as one of my weather points that I always check, because that's on the west side. Laramie's on, and Arlington's in the middle there. That's the most dangerous stretch near Elk Mountain. And then like for Cali, I think Soda Springs, SODA Springs. I think that's the place that's pretty close to the ski resorts. Yeah, the ski resorts that got so much snow, they couldn't allow skiing. That's how much snow they got last year. This is going to be an El Nino winter, so that could be totally different this year. But know before you go. So you're not up there trying to figure out how to put chains on your tires. Because by the way, if you do it wrong, you will really jack up those tires. Okay? The chains have to be on a certain side so you don't tear up the tires. But just watch videos on it. And I did a video, I think last year, on winter weather. If you've never driven in winter weather, if you're from like Biola Battery, Mississippi, and you never been, north of the Mason-Dixon line, watch the video. Know before you go. So anyway, that's that. I wanted to share one more quick thought. There's kind of a rule in deal making. I used to do a lot of deals, right? And I used to negotiate deals for clients. And a lot of times, especially on like commercial leases, I would have landlords say, well, no one's ever asked for that before. And my response would always be, yeah, I know. But this is my client. I don't care what you gave your other tenants. And that has served me well. But the axiom is, if you don't ask, you don't get. And the reason I bring that up is because I said something in, I think, my last video about TNT and about having some guaranteed revenue numbers for TNT trainers. And somebody said in a comment, they said, hey, I like what you say, but man, they will never ever go for that. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, well, first of all, never say never. But secondly, I've worked for a company, GP Transco, that guaranteed a certain pay every week. And if you were available for 7 days, because that was my caveat, right? Like, you have to be fully available to handle all loads. If you don't get to the revenue number, they got to bump it up, right? And when I was at GP Transco, I think they guaranteed gross wages of $1,000 a week, and it was on a rolling 2-week basis. So in other words, let's say that this week I only got enough money to make $875. Next week, if I didn't get enough money to have the $875 added to another $1,125 to average $2,000 for those 2 weeks, then they would give me enough money to hit $2,000 for 2 weeks. So it wasn't, because 1 week is a tiny snapshot, right? But 2 weeks, it's like maybe that's a little bit of a trend. And so, in fact, the very first week I was there, I only ran 1,700 miles, and I didn't even get through the first 7 days. I was at like 1,700 miles for the week, and for the pay week, and I called the operations manager. I'm like, his name is Mario. I said, Mario, this is not going to work for me. And he's like, give me your truck number. He's like, yeah, that doesn't work for me either. He goes, I want you here. He goes, I'm going to get you a new DM. And like, within 5 days, 6 days, I had a new DM. And the reason I bring all this up is that, sometimes I say stuff and I think people think it's pie in the sky. And maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. Because if you don't ask, you don't get. And this is true everywhere. I used to have, I don't even wear a watch anymore, see? I don't even wear a watch anymore. But for years, I wore a Rolex because I had a Rolex. I gave it away. One time, I went in to get my Rolex serviced. And if you have a Rolex, you know that periodically, like at least every 7 to 10 years, you have to put it in for service. It's like an expensive sports car. It's got to go in for service, and it's not something you want to trust to just any watch repair place. And the last time I did it, now it costs about $1,000 to get your watch service, but this was back, it was like 500 or so. So I go into this watch, this Rolex dealer at Tyson Galleria in Northern Virginia, Tyson's Galleria. And I said, hey, I want to put this in for service. They're like, okay, they give you a receipt for it because, you know, you don't want to lose track of your Rolex, right? And I said, hey, how about giving me a loaner watch? And they're like, what? And I said, yeah. I said, if I take my car into the car dealership, like when I had expensive car, you know, like I've had a couple Lexus cars, you know, and if I took it in for an oil change, they would give me a loaner. And they're like, oh, well, no one's ever asked for that before. Let me see. And so they kind of conversed, and then they're like, hey, we have this Tag Heuer that, you know, kind of looks similar to your watch. It's not as expensive, but we can loan you this. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I wore this Tag Heuer until they gave me my, you know, till I got my watch back from Switzerland or wherever they sent it. Actually, I think they just sent it up to New York City. But my point about the story is I'm not trying to flex that I had a Rolex. I'm trying to tell you, though, that if you don't ask, you don't get. And don't be afraid to ask for stuff in any regard. Like even at a restaurant, like we were, this is a little embarrassing. No, it's not. We were at Fire and Ice. I say we, it was me and 3 other truck drivers. And I ordered the same entree as another driver. And they brought it, and I really like sauteed spinach, and that was like the side that you could get with this particular entree, the salmon. The other person had a really big pile of sauteed spinach, and my pile was, in the, you know, grand scheme of things, was noticeably smaller. And I said, hey, you know, I was this is kind of like, you know, playing a military card, which I actually kind of loathe, but I did it this time. I'm like, look, I was in the military and I was in the Navy, you know, like Popeye, and I really love spinach, and this doesn't seem like it's as much as that person's. I said, do you think I could get more? Because, you know, I'm a veteran and everything. And the guy was like, yeah, sure, I'll get you some more. And so they did. And, you know, instead of just being upset that I didn't get enough spinach, I just asked for more spinach, and they gave it to me. And it's true. There's so many times, I could go on for an hour of times where I got stuff that other people didn't get. Not because I'm better looking, although I am. Not because I'm smarter, although I am. But because I was willing to open my mouth, right? And just ask. Not even demand. Just say, hey, is there any reason I can't get X? And a lot of times, no one has ever asked, and there isn't any reason you can't get X. A loaner watch, or more spinach, or I had a guy that he was actually moving office spaces into a bigger space in the same building, but I knew that the company that he franchised with was going to run him through the ringer if he changed his address. And I said to the landlord, I said, here's the deal, we'll do this lease, but he has to get the same address. You got to move the suite numbers around. They're like, why? I said, it'll just help my client. They're like, no one's ever asked for that before. I said, I'm sure. They're like, okay. And he told so many people, he's like, Terry saved me so much money and hassle by just, no one ever thought of that before. You don't ask, you don't get. All right, well, hey, I've wasted enough of your time. Be safe out there, and it's winter. I don't care what anybody tells you. There's already been snow out in Montana. Why, I saw it with my own eyes in Wyoming the other night. Know before you go. Talk to you soon. Bye.